Question is, was Meredith Willson really a band guy? For us band people, the answer is duh. But when I give this presentation to historical societies and luncheon groups, the answer is, well, we don't know. So I show them that he wrote over 400 songs, 3 Broadway musicals, 19 orchestral works, and 6 books. Now, some of these books are supposed to be autobiographical, and we should be able to use them as resources. But Willson was known for embellishing the truth for the sake of a good story. So instead, we'll make use of John Skipper's book, Meredith Willson, The Unsinkable Music Man. Now, those references, of course, are for his 2 musicals that were made into movies. And we'll start at the end. We'll start at the appendix, listing all of his compositions. Now, the yellow ones that are listed there, which you can't really see, are songs, many of them from musicals. The blue ones are his orchestral works. The green ones are band music and marches. A lot of stuff there. In addition to all of these songs, he wrote 6 books, 2 major symphonies as part of his 19 orchestral works. And we're going to go through now a chronology. His parents were John and Rosalie Willson. Hello.
Uh-oh.
What did I do?
I don't know. You pressed something.
Well, guess what? I don't know technology.
That's why I had Josh do it.
This is apparently a difficult birth.
1 second. We'll get going.
I got it, yeah. That's why I'm in the front row.
Saw that. Let's see his parents.
You were right here, right?
John and Rosalie Willson. Now, Willson is spelled with 2 L's. Robert Reniger Meredith Willson was born in Mason City, Iowa on May 18, 1902. He's pictured here on his mother's lap. He had an older sister, Dixie, she's on our left, and a brother, Cedric. Again, Meredith is on the right. In many of the family pictures, he always seems to be on the right. Growing up in Mason City, Iowa was a wonderful time for Meredith, and it played a large part in the writing of his books and his musicals. He started taking piano lessons from his mother, and then from a lady in town. Later, he decided to take up the flute, and his mother had walked through the town in wind and snow to borrow the money to buy it. He learned the most about the flute from Squiz Hazelton, a traveling musician who came through Mason City to play in the theater orchestra. Meredith studied for a year with him, but it ended when Squiz told his father that the kid knew more about the flute than he did. Finally, a teacher from Minneapolis was engaged to make a weekly trip to give Meredith lessons. During his high school freshman year, he landed a job playing flute and piccolo at Lake Okeechobee, a resort 100 miles west of Mason City. His entire 8 weeks of wages paid for the piccolo. He made 8 $12 weekly payments. At the end of the summer, Meredith was called upon to fill in as a substitute director. Having finished conducting, the excited youngster took a seat, but accidentally, you're ahead of me, you know, he sat on the piccolo, bending it in the process. Thus, the sum total of his first paying job as a musician was a break-even proposition. He had worked 8 weeks and only had a bent piccolo to show for it. He used it in his local parades and then ended taking it up in New York. After high school, Meredith joined his sister in New York City to pursue his musical dreams. He writes, I was a gangly 18 years old when I began to feel my britches were getting too big for Mason City. So I decided to expand, and New York was just about the right size. He began studying at the Damrosch Institute of Musical Art. It's now the Juilliard School of Music. Before establishing the conservatory, Damrosch had an association with both John Philip Sousa and Willow Grove Park. Perhaps there was some discussion between Damrosch and Sousa to help the 19-year-old get a gig with the best band in America. But before he took a job with Sousa, at age 18, Willson returned from New York to marry his high school sweetheart, Elizabeth, known as Peggy Willson. That's Willson with only one L. They were, quote, a happily married couple for 26 years, but more on that later. Through the years, there were many photographs of the, quote, happy couple, but I think that her influence and situation played a much greater role in Meredith's career than is generally acknowledged. But why are we talking about him at this particular convention? From 1921 to 1924, he was a member of John Philip Sousa's band. Some of what they played is on that piece of paper over there. Willson writes, Sousa's band had strict discipline. He also said that each concert ended with the Stars and Stripes forever. Sousa's autobiography, Marching Along, contains no mention of Willson or his years with the band. Now, Willow Grove Park was known as America's summer music capital from 1896 to 1926. 1926 being the last year of a Sousa performance at the park. The amphitheater was said to have had great acoustics. More than 40,000 people would fill the auditorium and surrounding hillside for the concerts. The Sousa Band played at Willow Grove Park for 25 years, ending in 1926. The band played a concert with intermission in the afternoon and one also at night. Barry Fuhrer, the Sousa authority who has been part of this gathering from time to time in the past, has said that Willson played solos all 3 years and he was with the Sousa Band. Barry is probably the one who has the most information and memorabilia about Sousa. I have copies. Oh, there he is. Little kid, 18, 19 years old, in the Sousa Band. Copies of the program over here from late 1923, where he plays Hans the Flute Player. Any flute players in here? Well, that's good. Apparently, it was a popular song at the time and recorded by Prince's Orchestra, but the recording does not even show who the flute player was. On August 25th, Willson played a piccolo duet called The Fluttering Birds. On August 29th, he plays a flute solo called The Idyll and Valse by Goddard, supposedly also another well-known solo. He repeated that solo on September 12th at the evening performance. A local newspaper shows him with Sousa and his sister Dixie and another woman, Celebrity. Archives list Willson as having performed a total of 14 solos with the band. Note the misspelling of his name during his first performance up there. Midell Willson with only one L. 1923, he leaves the Sousa Band and is playing in theaters in New York and working on experiments in sound for movies. Why did he leave Sousa's band? Perhaps it was to join his wife. Now, the Sousa Band, of course, was a touring organization. I guess his wife was in New York. Next, we find him playing flute in the New York Philharmonic under Arturo Toscanini from 1924 to 1929. He may or may not be in this photo. He said Toscanini could lead the orchestra with his eyes. He's probably on these early recordings reproduced by the Smithsonian, but we're not sure that he's in any of the pictures. 1926, he's also playing flute on radio broadcasts. Here we go, Josh. In 1930, he's into a new phase, not as a monk, but as an orchestral composer and conductor. We're hearing his Symphony No. 2, The Missions of California, in a recording made in 1998 from the Moscow Symphony Orchestra. They're cheaper, I guess, over there.
That's true.
He has 19 published compositions for orchestra, including a Parade Fantique done for the New York Philharmonic, Song of Steel with an NBC Symphony, the Radio City Symphony with the NBC Symphony Orchestra, and the Symphony of San Francisco, played by the San Francisco Orchestra. This is the recording we just heard a little bit of, and this is when he was performing with the San Francisco Orchestra. In 1941, he published a popular song called You and I. It's making its way around, or not. Okay, anybody ever heard of it? Well, it was a #1 hit for Glenn Miller. It was also recorded by Bing Crosby, Tommy Dorsey, and Frank Sinatra. Really? Now, like John Philip Sousa, who was quite an author, Wilson thought that he could become an author also, writing 6 books, 3 of them somewhat autobiographical. In his book, Skipper writes, the classic William trait was to embellish the truth for the sake of a good story. This story perhaps to promote his latest book. Wilson writes, I returned to New York and found work as a substitute piccolo player in the band that played at Central Park. One night as I was walking to the performance, I ran into Sousa on the streets. Really? Okay. Reluctant to tell him of my situations, I lied to my former conductor by telling him that I was leading the orchestra in Central Park. I should have known better, he says. The concert ended with the playing of the Stars and Stripes Forever, with the piccolo players marching down to the footlights, the same routine Sousa's band had done when I played in it. And there, as I blew into my instrument, I scanned the audience. My gaze fell upon Sousa, sitting in the front row. Our eyes met, and there I stood with my piccolo, which is the title of the book. Apparently, somebody thought it deserved reprinting. Anybody ever read it? Okay.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Well, all right. We'll have you give it an outline later on. In 1937, he is the host of a radio show where he jokes with and interviews various celebrities like George Burns and Gracie Allen.
Yeah.
Then NBC decides to move the show from New York to Los Angeles. It was Wilson's job to be both the show's comic and its musical director. So now he's in California, not playing flute anymore and not doing much with bands either. During World War II, he wrote shows and performed for the USO. In 1940, he starts getting into movies, writing the film score for Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. He gets an Academy Award nomination for the Best Music Score of a Dramatic Motion Picture for William Wyler's The Little Foxes. As a sign-off for his radio show, he wrote,
May the good Lord bless and keep you, whether near or far.
Who's the singer?
Bing Crosby.
May you
Bing
find
Crosby.
that long
Perry Como.
golden day.
Then in 1947, a newspaper reports, March 5th, Meredith Willson, music composer and director, was divorced by Mrs. Elizabeth Willson on the grounds of mental cruelty. They were married for 26 years. She will receive 25% of the musician's earnings, a Beverly Hills home, a gas station in San Francisco, savings bonds, some insurance, and securities. She testified that her husband stayed out late and went on prolonged trips and answered evasively when she tried to learn where he had been. 11 months later, he marries Rini, a Russian-born. Now, that was supposed to be some music.
It was supposed to be music.
Want to stand up and take it? No, ready?
Now, give me a second. I'm gonna run it in a different program.
Well, a different program. Do I have to pay
because-
for it?
Yes, you do.
Oh dear.
$10 a slide.
So part of what I want to show you here is, oh, I didn't know he did that. I didn't know he wrote that. Various different kinds of things about our music man and whether he really was a band guy. He certainly is pretty far away from the band idiom at this particular point. And he's now gotten a divorce because he wouldn't tell her where he had been at night. Now, where's Art? Art, where are you? Back there. Okay. Any questions will be referred to him because we'll talk about him later and Meredith Willson. He knows him personally, and what did you say? He was quite a character?
He was quite a character, knew how to bend the elbow.
Oh, okay.
I was 18, an undergraduate at Michigan, and he would come out. He was a friend of Bill Rovelli's, and he liked to hang out with the percussionists. So we'd go to the old Heidelberg in Ann Arbor, and he'd tell me my stories.
All right, so save your questions for him.
Yeah.
He can answer them. I can't. How are we doing with this? Push. How about some music?
Hold on a second. Here we go. Play. It's Music Man, right?
Yep. All right, so now he has returned to California and starts working on this musical called The Silver Triangle, a story about a traveling salesman who talks about starting a boys' band. It becomes, of course, The Music Man, and he's back in the band business, where perhaps his heart has always been. So in 1957, 8 years later, after 40 songs and 30 revisions, The Music Man premiered on Broadway. We just heard his famous song, 76 Trombones, and the other one is Till There Was You, a love song with the same melody at half speed and different meter. All right, so now we're talking about something we know something about. From 1959 to 1962, he wrote music for Centennial Productions in Oregon and Kansas. 1959, he and his second wife, Remy, promote his new book. But he doesn't know the territory, and that's the story behind writing Meredith Willson's The Music Man. There are reprints of that. Have you read that one? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. 1962, we see him at the White House with President Kennedy and his wife, Rini. From 1960 to 1962, he writes another musical. Any idea? Thank you, The Unsinkable Molly Brown. You can have a donut. It ran on Broadway for 532 performances. The popular song from that one was... Here's the melody. Many of us have conducted that song also. All right. 1962, we're back in Mason City, and it's the site of the premiere of the motion picture, The Music Man, which was timed to coincide with the annual band festival. There's the cast at the premiere. Like his character Harold Hill, Willson led the big parade through the town. From 1963 to 64, his adaptation of the film Miracle on 34th Street, called Here's Love, played on Broadway for 334 performances. That show produced It's Beginning to Look Like Christmas. The "a lot" is not part of the title. 1964, he and Remy did summer specials for NBC TV. Unsinkable Molly Brown was made into a motion picture in 1964, starring Debbie Reynolds. Remy died in December of 1966. He married Rosemary Sullivan in February of 1968. Meredith and Rosemary are shown here on the bridge in Mason City, which is featured in the story of Music Man. In March 1967, Wilson came to Robosonia. You ready? Wake up back there.
I'm here.
Okay. To see a high school production of Music Man starring Art Himmelberger playing the part of
Marcellus.
Thank you very much. Art gave the details in his presentation called I Could Not Make This Up 2-3 years ago.
Yes.
Yes, okay. He'll answer all the questions. Okay. 1973, Meredith attended the ceremony for the Sousa's election to the Hall of Fame for Great Americans. But with the premiere of The Music Man in 1962, he's definitely back in the band business. Like leading bands, composed of 500 California high school students in 1964, returning several times to his hometown for the North Iowa Band Festival, and conducting the University of Iowa Band at the Rose Bowl Parade in 1982. And even as the years advanced, he still occasionally played piccolo in public. Well, he died in 1984 of heart failure at age 82. His funeral included mourners dressed in Music Man costumes, and a barbershop quartet sang Light a Rose. He's buried in the family plot in Mason City, Iowa. Of special interest, Wilson received 5 honorary doctor's degrees, but the only degrees he ever received after high school. The title song is Beginning to Look Like Christmas without the "a lot." Watch this one. On the Ed Sullivan Show, one of the songs the Beatles sang was Till There Was You. Really? Wilson donated his memorabilia to UCLA. Instead of being on display, he later found them stuffed away in a closet. Music Man had several Broadway revivals, the most recent in 2022, starring Hugh Jackman. So, was Meredith Willson really a band guy? Well, perhaps the real answer to the question is that bands probably were always in the heart of this Music Man. So, things you never heard about, never knew about Meredith Willson, but he certainly was a band guy. Ask any questions of Art. I'm done.
So
Yes.
where's that statue?
I think it's in Mason City. I think it's in
It's close to where his house is, and they have a museum there too. I've been there.
Well, hopefully they got some stuff from UCLA and put it in his museum.
That's where the statue is.
That's where the statue is?
Yeah, it's in Mason City near his home.
And how was that book you read?
It was interesting. It had a
Interesting.
different story than the one you just told about, and there I stood with my piccolo.
Yes.
Where did you get the quote that when he played piccolo with Sousa's band, they finished each concert with the Stars and Stripes?
In here?
Who wrote that?
John Skipper.
Because Paul Wiley and I went in a lot of Sousa's complete programs,
Yeah.
and we have yet to find any place where it was listed as the last piece, even with the ones where the encores were listed.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I thought I had some old thing. Anyway, yeah, you can read this and, you know, document that if you want. Anybody else want to see anything? Where's that wonderful piece of music from You Now this afternoon we're going to have the opportunity to sing a song from whatever, but that's a whole other story. So we're going to find out whether or not anybody recognizes. I had this in order at one point. So we talked about this piece of music that was made famous by Glenn Miller, Bing Crosby, Tommy Dorsey, and Frank Sinatra. It was called You and I. Anybody ever heard of it? They hadn't either this morning, so you're missing out on nothing apparently. But apparently these guys thought it was all pretty important, whatever. So the main reason that we know that Meredith Willson was a band guy because he wrote the Music Man. And the most famous song from that one is 76 Trombones. Raise your hands if you know the song. Thank you. If we slowed it down and changed the meter, we had what? Phil, there was you. You know that one? Words? Good, 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 good. From the musical and movie, we have I Ain't Down Yet, written by Meredith Willson. The idea is you're just supposed to say, oh, he wrote that. Okay.
Oh, he wrote that?
Thank you. May the good Lord bless and keep you, he wrote as a sign-off for his radio shows. Anybody? You'll have to sing loudly. From a musical on Broadway nobody ever heard of. It's beginning to look not a lot. That's not in the title. It's beginning to look like Christmas. So any of you that know any of those songs? Good. Sing loudly. Any one of them, go. Come on. Good. Thank you.